Hello, welcome to another edition of CNA's Opus. My name is Rich. I'm a certified nursing assistant, and what I want to go over today is, I was looking at this board, and sometimes the board gets in my way, and sometimes I like to kick things from my head. So, what I was thinking about just before was the mucosal ciliary escalator, which is kind of like inside your bronchi, within your lungs. You have these columnar epithelial cells going all the way around. All the way around. You can think of it as in a circle here, like this. There's going to be a circle right here, right? Let's say it's dilated, it's opened up. And there's these columnar epithelial cells going all the way around. And in there's a specific modified columnar epithelial cell called a goblet cell. And the goblet cell secretes mucus. And on the apical side, into the lumen of the bronchi, there's cilia. So they're finger-like projections that can move the mucus around. And that's its role right there, is to kind of, that's part of what that's exactly what the mucosal ciliary escalator is to cleanse out the mucus. It's part of the innate immune system. So say when you inhale an allergen or a pathogen or dirt or anything like that, what it'll do is you have this here, and the ciliary is in there on the apical side of the columnar epithelial cells, and the goblet cells are secreting mucus onto the cilia. So when dirt or pathogens or anything like that is there, the cilia cleanses itself, cleanses the mucus. It moves the mucus out of the bronchi into a bigger bronchi, and then finally into the primary bronchi, either the left or the right, whatever lung it's going into, and then it'll push it into the trachea, which also has cilia, which then pushes it through the larynx, and then finally into the esophagus, and then finally into the stomach, where there's stomach acid. So whatever was there, whether it was a pathogen or just dirt, it'll get burned up in the hyaluronic acid in your stomach. And that's part of the innate immune system. Some of the problems with it is you'll see in cystic fibrosis or asthma is you have, and I'm going to get to that in a second, at least part of it anyway, is you have the columnar epithelial cells here, and then you have the basement membrane right there, which is attached by integrins right there, which are adhesion molecules to the basement membrane. And the basement membrane just holds these epithelial cells in place, so they don't collapse on one another and they don't rearrange one another. They hold it in place. And then outside of that, you have the lamina propria. And the lamina propria has certain blood vessels, and it has these mast cells, and these mast cells are part of the immune system, which antibodies will eventually bind to, but we're not there yet. That right there, those three parts, the epithelial cells, the basement membrane, and the lamina propria, are called the mucosa. So those three portions right there. Outside of that is not the mucosa. That's not a part of it, but it's still a part of the bronchi. I don't know why they don't include it, but I don't make the friggin' rules. Outside of that is smooth muscle tissue. Okay? And then outside of that is this submucosal glands. And these submucosal glands that are going around are also secreting mucus. And that mucus there will make it back into the lamina, the lumen of the bronchi. Going to make its way back in. So it's not just the goblet cells that are secreting mucus that are going to get on the cilia. It's also these sub mucosal glands that are producing mucus that are going to make it back into the lumen of the bronchi and onto the cilia. So that's even more mucus that's going into that region that'll collect pathogens, dust, whatever it is, and then it gets cleansed. It gets cleansed by the cilia, moves it out of there, and then into the primary the primary bronchi, and then into the trachea, and then down into the esophagus, and then into the stomach, where it gets burned up in the stomach, whatever it was, whether it was harmful or it wasn't harmful. What else? What I want to say about that? Yes, the smooth muscle tissue right there, particularly with people who have asthma, if they have it frequently and it's very intense and over long periods of time, if they're not treated properly, it can become very, very serious. Because what happens is the smooth muscle tissue will contract there during the asthma attack. It'll contract, and it'll close in on the lamina propria and on the basement membrane and on the epithelial cells over and over again. So you can think of it like this: it's dilated, and then the smooth muscle tissue that surrounds it contracts, and it makes it smaller. Right? It constricts the whole thing, constricts the whole mucosa right there, and that happens over and over and over again. And remember, these smooth muscle tissues, just like any other muscle, they get worked over and over and over again, and then they get fed. And what happens when muscles get worked and then they get fed is they grow. So the smooth muscle tissue gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and to compensate for that, just so when these larger smooth muscle tissue contracts later on when it's bigger, so it doesn't just smash the bronchi right there, the lamina propria will enlarge to compensate. So when that pressure comes down, it doesn't just crush the bronchi. So the lamina propria will get bigger. So the smooth muscle tissue got bigger. The lamina propria got bigger to compensate. And because the lamina propria got bigger, the lumen within the bronchi gets smaller. And it gets smaller over the extended periods of time. It gets smaller, and it stays that way. Because there's like an epithelial arrangement where it'll constrict like this, and because the lamina propria got larger to compensate for the smooth muscle tissue getting larger, more pressure coming in on it, that got smaller, and it'll stay like that in a resting state, not just in an asthma attack. It will stay where the bronchial tube is now just like statically like that. It doesn't dilate again. It stays like that. So now you have smaller airways for the person to breathe through all the time. All the time. If the person has chronic asthma and it's not treated properly, and it's not treated, or it's not treated at all, it'll stay constricted. So now they're going to have breathing problems for the rest of their life, unless there's some kind of treatment that's going to redilate it, or maybe some kind of surgery. I don't know, but it'll stay like that. So that's one thing to be very careful about, and really, if you have an asthma condition, you really need to see a medical doctor and stick with it, because if it continues and it progresses, and it gets more frequent, and it gets more intense, these asthma attacks. It won't just be during asthma attacks. It may actually get stuck like that, in a sense, if you don't seek medical attention. So I urge you, if you do have asthma, to go see a medical doctor and prevent that from occurring. So anyway, a lot of people have a lot of issues, and they're not really grasping the concepts of antibodies and antigens. And this kind of ties in with asthma, because asthma has allergens. And allergens are proteins which are foreign to the body, but the body kind of mistakes it as something that's dangerous or harmful to the body when it's really innocuous. So the antibody, the antigen, or the allergen, if you want to look at it as something that's not harmful, but I'm going to go with antigen here. The antigen here, right here, you see this little glob. I hate this board. I really do. Really do. But this antigen up here, I'm not going to even point it to it. It says antigen above it, so I don't have to point. It's antigen above it, and antigens on it have different binding sites for antibodies, which are made by the white blood cells, and they're also called the antibodies are called immunoglobulins. It's the proteins that make it up. It's the immunoglobulins, or antibodies, and the fragment antigen binding region right there. That really is going to vary. That binding portion right there that has, see, there's the long, here is the heavy chain of the antibody, and here's the light chain of the antibody, and they're connected by disulfide bonds right there. But this portion right here at the tip, that's going to vary a lot, because not only can they be produced to go to different antibodies, to go to different antigens. Not only can they be produced to go to different antigens, but they can be produced to go to the same antigen that has different epitotes. So in other words, this is one antigen up here. That's one antigen, but it might have multiple epitote sites. So these here can vary to bind to the same antigen at different sites and have different fragment antigen binding. It'll vary. It'll vary. That region right there can vary for the same antigen, because the antigen can have multiple epitotes. So one antibody at this region can vary just for one antigen to bind to different epitotes on the same antigen or allergen. And that's a mouthful, but then it'll vary for different antigens. So this right here, this portion right here, has like almost infinite variations. This portion down here, this heavy chain and part of the light chain right here, right below it, right here, is called the fragment crystallizable. And that's more of the segmentation. That's more of the segmentation. Even though there is some variation in it, there's only 9 of them. So we just group them into 9. So we could say that's the segmentation. That's the similarities between the immunoglobulins. And immunoglobulin is just abbreviated as Ig. So we have IgA, and there's IgA 1 and 2, and then IgM, and then IgE 1, 2, 3, and 4, IgD, and then IgE. So those are kind of the segmentations of it. Even though there's 9 and there's a little bit of variation, the variation is so small compared to the fragment antigen binding portion right here. That could have so many variations because, again, it can vary. That portion of the antibody can vary for the same antigen, for different epitopes on the same antigen, and then vary for different antigens and their epitopes. So this really has infinite variations. This one I'll say it's the segmentation, or it's the similarity between all the antibodies, because there's only 9 of them. And when you compare 9 to billions, you can just say the 9 is this, what's similar, what the segmentation is. And again, I use the word segmentation and variation a lot in what I say because that's exactly what the laws of nature are dependent on. Natural selection is dependent on segmentation and variation. Like segmentation, your ribs right here, that's segmentation. The DNA within your cell, that's copied. Same, replicating. That's segmentation right there. Those are segmentations. Same. Then within your DNA, you have mutations occur. There's variations. That's the variation. Segmentation and variation are exactly what natural selection depends on. So I'm going off on a rant here, but I hope you got something out of immunoglobulins and antibodies, immunoglobulins, same thing, and antigens and the mucosal ciliary escalator, which part of the innate immune system, which again clears out the mucus, which is can lead right into not only asthma but cystic fibrosis, which I hope to go over cystic fibrosis soon, which I think I will in depth. And that's it. Rich, CNA. See you later.